It's cool. We can edit all this out. We have the power of post-production.
All of
Yeah.
it, because you might need all of it. So
Yeah. Well, we have a very robust editing team, consisting of
One
me
person. Yeah.
and me.
Yes.
Guys, look at this full house that we've got here. Welcome. Look at this crew. Screenagers, for those of you listening who maybe can't see the crew, you will hear voices of some of our favorite returning guests to talk about a very exciting movie. We've got our Stephen King crew. We've got Ramona. We've got Bob. We've got Hannah. How is everyone doing? Welcome back.
Fabulous.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's go.
Very
Excited.
Let's party. There's four of us. Obviously, talking about Stand By Me, there are four main characters. I think by the end of the episode, we will determine which of us is most aligned with each of the four main characters.
Is this
Oh,
like
yeah, I'm
Sex
ready
in the
for
City, but Stephen King? Like who's a
Yeah.
Miranda, who's a Samantha? Yeah.
Exactly.
Who's a Fern?
But
Yes.
you know, we'll come to realize that we all have bits and pieces of each of them. You know, the same way that like no one is just a Miranda or just a Samantha. We all have a little bit of all of them. We all have a little Vern. We all have a little Gordy, and that's the beauty of movies and of life. So since there are four of us, and this is a movie that I assume there's going to be a lot to talk about, I say we just jump in. What do you guys
Yeah.
say?
Let's
Yeah,
do it.
for
Let's
real.
go.
Let's do it. We're here. It's the Canon. We're back. Another essential movie. All that good stuff. Boom, boom, boom. Let's talk some Stand By Me. So this movie, I'm going to start by throwing it out there. I had not seen this before. I oddly went through 33 years of life without ever having seen Stand By Me. I don't know if it's because I'm not a big Stephen King guy or what the reason may have been, but I watched for the first time for this recording, and it was great. But before we get into the movie, I guess to get into the movie itself, I think I want to start with Bob, because Bob, you're from Maine.
God.
Stephen King, famously from Maine.
Yep.
You've been on like 80% of the Stephen King episodes that we've had on this podcast so far.
Yeah.
So was your experience growing up in Maine, how similar was it to what we see in Stand By Me? I know that the
Oh my
movie
God,
takes place
yeah.
in Oregon, or Oregon. There's probably someone from that state who's mad at the way.
Kinda
Is it
give me
Oregon?
crap about it.
I say Oregon. Do
It's
people say
Oregon.
Oregon?
I say
New
oregano.
York.
Is it
It's
Tarragon?
New Yorkers,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Just New Yorkers
No,
say
it's
Oregon?
Oregon.
Yeah, I guess.
Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've definitely said Oregon before in my life. But I've never met anyone from Oregon because why would I? I'm from New York.
Careful.
So the movie takes place in Oregon, but the book takes place in Maine, and Stephen King, it's kind of autobiographical, I assume. So all that to say, Bob, how similar was your childhood to the vibe of something like Stand By Me?
Oh my God. Because I grew up in a very small mill town in northern Maine, and this felt very real to me when I first saw it. They said Oregon, but I don't know why they even bothered, because most movies and TV shows shoot on the West Coast and pretend it's Maine anyway. So and they even refer to Togus like in the middle of it, which is the only VA hospital in the state. So I'm like, why did they even bother putting it in Oregon? But yeah, it was extremely similar to my childhood. Growing up in a rural Maine town in the 80s was very much like growing up in a rural town in the 50s anywhere else, you know. So we spent a lot of time on our bikes going wherever we wanted and getting in all kinds of trouble and not telling our parents about it.
Yep.
So yeah.
Memories.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Did you ever like tell your parents you were camping at a friend's parents and like do the I did that.
Yeah.
I did that in, the suburbs, right? That's like a classic coming of age experience of like, I'll tell my parents
to your
about your house.
Yeah, that's a rite of passage.
Classic.
Lying your parents to go out with your friends.
Yeah.
When you're all 13 and 14 and really shouldn't be, but that was it.
But maybe not to see a dead body. right?
Yeah.
No, well, I mean, if I had the opportunity, but I never came up, so.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But no cell phones, no being tracked wherever you went, and yeah, so freedom
nice.
of a certain kind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, okay, it sounds like, Romona, for you, it was kind of a similar childhood experience where you grew up that was also not 1950s Oregon.
No, I mean, I was born in Canton, but I moved to Columbus when I was like 3, and I've been here ever since. But Columbus is a big city, but we always lived like in the suburbs, but we always had our neighborhood friends and our bikes, and my parents didn't give us the option of staying inside like after school or in the summers, like go out and play. So we went out and played, and we were out till all hours at night, and it was a time I like, when you feel homesick for a place that no longer exists. That's how I feel when I watch these movies, because I'm like, it wasn't 1950s. We weren't playing baseball, mailbox baseball, and causing trouble. But I don't know. It's that nostalgia feel that you had just your friends, and you weren't online talking to people. You were playing night tag and hanging out in somebody's tree house. I had a neighbor who had a tree house that we would always go up in and hang out, and
smoking cigs, playing cards.
Well, I did smoke. Don't tell my parents, but yeah, I smoked some cigarettes, and it was disgusting, and I've never done it since. Yeah.
You learned the hard way, and some kids need
I did.
Yeah.
I learned how disgusting it was, and so I stopped. But yeah, it was a very different time, and I think that's part of the reason why I love watching like these kind of movies. And that movie spoke to me a lot, was because I remember what it was like to go off on an adventure with your friend and think that you're doing this amazing thing. And as I said, we were only gone 2 days, but it feels so much longer sometimes when you're off doing that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Absolutely. Hannah, I'm assuming a similar experience for you.
Not exactly. So I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee. Still live here. I mean, I was gone for a bit, came back, love it, never leaving again. But I grew up in the middle of the woods, outside of, like, still in the city, but like I transferred high schools. Everything was a 20-minute drive. And so I didn't have the like neighborhood you could bike around, like windy not quite mountain roads, but windy, like not safe on the bike. But my best friend lived either like a 7-minute drive on roads or like a 3-minute walk through the woods. So a lot of my early childhood was meeting my best friend in the woods and playing fairies, witches, like little hippie kids. And so it was great. I think more of my rebellion came in the early high school, mid high school, little late high school. So like the less like charming stuff, but the lying of whose friend's house you're at. But that was more to like go, toilet paper someone's house, which I guess is, that's the only one I'm going to share publicly. But yeah, so I think I guess you guys saw a cameo of my 6-year-old, but I have kids now, and it's really interesting because my childhood wasn't Stand By Me or even close to what you guys were describing, and my kids definitely won't be. The concept of a child like walking themselves what was considered a safe distance for us, that's not a thing
scary
anymore.
now.
Yeah. Now it's the perception of, and which kind of stinks. I mean, there's such importance in healthy risk taking. And yes, sometimes you have to learn the hard way, but that's how you develop like resilience. I mean, there's so much science to it. So it's a little disappointing with helicopter parenting and advent of technology and, I don't know, public perception of what's acceptable. To parent someone not in your family. I don't know, but
I've been reading a lot lately about that concept, even though I don't have kids, but it is something that I'm like generally fascinated by, just like the idea of this like loss of free play, right? Like, even though maybe, Bobby, your experience was probably closest to something like Stand By Me in terms of like the actual space that you were in and like the things that you were doing with your friends when you were growing up. But like, I think to some degree we all had this feeling of like when you're like 12 or 13, right? It's like this like perfect age where you don't yet have any responsibilities, but you, at least for like most of, you know, human history up until like this current point, like kids at that age are like old enough to like go off and do things on their own. Like
Yeah.
my experience growing up at that age, growing up in the suburbs, I also like have very fond memories of just like dicking around with my friends and like going off on random adventures and like riding my bike to like someone's house and being like, hey, you want to just like go wander around town and like see what kind of trouble we get into? Like it's very much so a shared experience that a lot of people have. And
Right.
I've been fascinated by the idea of like why it is that that's going away and what the reasons might be, which we obviously like don't have to get into in this particular podcast because like we could, but also like we should just talk about how cool and fun this movie is. But I think like what makes this movie essential, right, is that idea that it is such a like universal experience, or like a mostly universal experience that so many of us have had and are fond for, which I think is like the beauty of something like Stand By Me. Even though we didn't grow up in Oregon in the 1950s, but like we have all been 12 and to some extent we like understand a lot of what this movie is communicating about being 12 years old.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. In some ways,
nicely
we are
put.
still all 12, you know?
I mean, my
Yeah.
sense of humor is very
I agree.
12-year-old immature. So I say all the time, I'm like, I'm this old and I act like I'm 12. And I asked my husband the other day, we went to a baseball game. I was like, do you think we're too immature for our age? He's like, no, we're just right. I was like, okay, thank God.
Yeah.
Because
Speak-
sometimes it's like,
Speaking of immature and 12-year-old senses of humor, and to take us away from the like more serious topic of like what is happening to kids these days, what do you guys think of the pie eating scene in the middle, the story that Gordy tells? I know it's like this is like a weird, we're going from like the macro of like what this movie means to everyone to a very specific scene, but
Very specific.
yeah.
because you guys brought up the humor of 12-year-olds.
Okay, I was like, why are you bringing that scene up now? Yes, the humor. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Hannah, why do you think I'm bringing up that scene when it comes to like the humor of
Because
12-year-olds?
vomiting is funny. I mean, it's gross, but it's pretty funny. And like this idea of like, I mean, okay, I not to toot my own horn, but I did read the novella this week before coming on the podcast. I was like, let me do that little
Nicely
extra.
done.
Thank you. I technically audiobooked it, but that's reading still.
That is reading.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're reading, yeah.
I'm a busy lady about town. I got to read those audiobooks. For the most part, because the novella is so short, like the movie is almost exactly the novella. They don't leave a lot out. Even the dialogue, like the more 12-year-old humor, the like shit talk about your mom, like that's all.
Yeah.
You know, line for line. But the pie eating scene was written with this just like, you know, the revenge of lard ass and you know, and the way he's gonna get back at everybody and his plan, and he chugs castor oil before the big pie, and you know, the gurgling, and I mean it's so over the top and disgusting. And you're right, that's such like 12-year-old humor, but not in a like, it's not so far or so dumb that somebody removed from that doesn't still think it's funny. It's so it's like, oh yeah, I remember when I thought that was the funniest thing that could happen. Simpler times, you know?
Yeah.
It's not because it's 12 and not like 15, it's not tainted by like very immature sexualization that, you know, a 15-year-old might do in the way that, so it's still like, yeah, like baby, I don't know, it's like baby humor. It's so sweet and gross.
Yeah, it's gross, but it's gross, but like it's not like malicious, even though they are like making fun of this this kid for like being overweight or whatever. But like it's still like it's not like that mean spirited.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bob and Ramona, what did you guys think of, or what do you think of like that scene specifically, and maybe just like how this movie portrays like the humor and sensibilities of 12-year-old kids or 12-year-old boys? specifically?
The thing that I liked about the lard ass scene is I'm all for a revenge story. So I was like, get it going, like get everybody in the face, like do it. But at the same time, I'm at an age now where like seeing people vomit makes me feel
Oh
like
no.
I'm going to. So I will admit that I did rewatch this today, and I did kind of fast forward past the projectile vomiting part because I was like, I don't know if I could do it. But I loved it because it's Gordy telling the story,
Mm-hmm.
and I love the novella too. And so I know this isn't the only story Gordy tells, but it's the one they used in the book.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's a 12-year-old telling a story, and he's a good writer. They've established that, oh, he tells these stories, they're great. You know, his brother Denny loved his story, but he's still telling it as a 12-year-old. So it's not like this really beautifully written prose or like, you know, big vocabulary words, or it's just a simple story about a kid who's overweight who gets teased and gets revenge by throwing a pie on everybody. It's 12-year-old humor, but it's also just so well done that you kind of get taken out of the movie, and then when it's over you get thrown back in and you're like, well, I want to know what happened, like to everybody after the fact. Like you kind of are like, what happened? So that's the mark of a good storyteller, I think. And I did love the I can't be too upset that my daughter wandered out a little bit into the movie, because there's some questionable insults going back and forth about people's
Oh
mothers.
yeah.
Sure.
Which
Yep.
to me are hilarious, but I'm like, she probably shouldn't be hearing that right now. But
Yeah.
no, I had no problem with it. I thought it was that's what I love about Stephen King. I think he writes children unbelievably well, at least for the time period that he grew up in, and he understands their language and, you know, how they would speak to each other. And so I think that comes across really well in Stand By Me. It's just, you completely believe they're friends. You know, I'm sure they've called each other these names many times. And I thought it was really funny. So I would never want to hear my kids saying that to each other, but I don't mind it on the television. So it's all right.
The
I
heart
think
of it is like what we can relate to. Like,
Yeah.
you know, when I was 12, maybe I did use those words specifically with my friends, but like, you know, and kids these days maybe won't say the exact same thing, but the heart of
Right.
like, yeah, you like throw a couple like friendly jabs at your friends, but like you still like
Yeah.
all love each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bob, what do you think of like, just like, you could talk about Lardass, or what you thought about how they present Gordy as a writer, or just how like 12-year-olds are presented in this movie, and like both like Stephen King's ability to understand 12-year-old characters, and then also like Rob Reiner's ability to translate that.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I won't talk about the Lardass stuff too much, because honestly, my opinion is slightly against the grain on this, and that I've never enjoyed that story. Even when I first read it in the novella, I was like,
This Gordy kid sucks.
yeah,
He's a terrible
They
it
writer.
was
think he's a
badly
writer?
written. I just was like, where's the fart jokes? Come on, that's the 12-year-olds I know.
Yeah.
So
Too much
and
vomit
it kind
humor,
of,
not enough fart humor.
exactly.
We need some toilet
Exactly.
humor.
Exactly. And I think Ramona mentioned that it kind of takes you out of the movie for a moment,
Mhm.
and then you're back into the story. And I think it did the same for me.
Yeah.
And like you said, there are a couple of other stories that he's written as an adult as well as a kid. Then they all did that for me in the novella.
Mhm.
So, but the tone and that sense of humor, and even just there are insults in that movie that you cannot get away with
Yeah.
anymore. They are not appropriate, but I remember being that age and in that time frame, and they were things you said to your friends all the time. Things that if your mother caught you saying, you would get a whooping. But
Mhm.
that was the society that you moved around in, your friends, that was a definite standard part of the conversation. So, and it all feels true to that 11, 12, 13, that cusp of junior high, before things start to get real and serious. You're at the apex of childhood. You're the king of kids. at 12. And then you go into junior high and high school, and everything starts to shift around and be significantly different at that point. But and King goes back to that particular well of kids several times, and he kills it every time. So
Yep. Agreed.
That idea that this movie really encapsulates like the transition period of being 12 or 13, which is like such a tricky age for kids. Yeah, Hannah, what do you think of just like these kids existing at like the apex of childhood before then like all the terrifying things that are to come in junior high and high school? All the high schoolers in this movie are like freaking terrifying. But I remember being 13 and being like, I don't want to go to high school. Those 17-year-olds are like grown men. And now looking back, we're like, oh, they're just babies. But
Yeah, they're
at
tiny.
13, it's like, Kiefer
big.
Sutherland is the scariest person in the world.
Yeah. In like a weirdly hot way, but we don't
Yeah.
have to get into that. Yeah. Like, oh, I need to search some things in myself. I would say, I don't know if I'm the best person to answer this, because at least not to generalize, but the young girl experience is different than the young boy experience, right? Like the way that they
interesting.
shit talk each other, girls could never, right? Even it's different. I do think though that this one is interesting with the boys, at this cusp of adolescence, because they have all experienced their own pretty serious trauma, right? Either from like parents with addiction issues, the loss of a brother, I mean, Gordy, his brother died and his parents are just like, it should have been you. I mean, no child deserves that. So I think they're already having to deal with really hard things that a 12-year-old is like not capable. I mean, I don't think many people are fully capable of like walking through that type of rejection and that type of neglect. And so I think for them, it's really neat to see the ways that they do try to maintain their level of being children, that they do try to go on their adventures. They do have their little playhouse. Not that they're little kids. They're not regressing by any means, but part of adolescence is kind of picking yourself up and trying to force yourself into faking it as a teenager, and faking that confidence and faking that sense of belonging. And for them to all be doing this in the midst of not knowing exactly how to deal with their trauma, or just being so resigned to their circumstance. I think Chris's story, River Phoenix, is probably the hardest, right? I mean, he's been told he's nothing for so long. I think I'm going to mix up the book and the movie a lot, so I'll try not to do that too much. But in the book, it talks about like when his dad goes on the bender, his mom just leaves until the bender's over, and then she comes back. Like, so not only does he have a dad who's abusive physically, emotionally, all the ways, he has a mom who's neglectful. And so he's just like having to deal with that he is unwanted and no one expects him to amount to anything. But he's also still just trying to be a kid. So it's heartbreaking. I don't know. I want to give them all like a big hug, but they probably wouldn't want that because they don't know how to deal with their emotions because they're 12-year-old boys. And yeah.
I do want to come back to all this trauma stuff because that is a wild part of this movie. And for me as a first time watcher was like very surprising. But I also really appreciate what you brought up about the fact that this is like pretty specific to boys and like the 13-year-old boy experience, which, my ignorance on the front end, I was like, yeah, this is a universal thing that we all understand. But you were able to, very wisely remind us that it's not that universal for everyone. So Ramona, I'm curious as to what you thought about like them as, children, boys turning into men or whatever, and like what that cusp from childhood to teenage years or like young adulthood kind of meant.
I do agree that I do think the boy experience of adolescence is very, very different. And it's sometimes it's harder when you grow up in a house where your parents are neglectful or abusive or whatever, and they all had it. They all had their problems. So I think that it was very specific to, they're already they're grown up way more than they should be at that age, because they
Mhm.
have, I mean, they can tell their parents, oh, we're leaving. I could tell my parents, oh, I'm going over to so-and-so's house. And then we go to so-and-so's house instead, that I'm not supposed to go there. But they were gone for 2 days. And, their parents knew they were out camping, but like, did they really even think about where their kids were going? Like that kind of parenting. And my situation growing up was very, 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 very different. I have 3 sisters, so it was all girls, and it was all very, we weren't we if my mother ever heard us say anything to each other the way that these boys talk to each other, it's like, what is it, Christmas story, soap in the mouth, like it would be,
Soap in the
we'd
mouth.
be in trouble.
Yep.
But we were all very passive aggressive towards
Yeah.
each other when we were fighting. Like it was never your mom or punching each other or wrestling on the ground the way, I always want to call him Mouth, Corey Feldman. I always want to call him Mouth because he's Mouth to me from the Goonies. But he's a smart ass in both movies.
Sure.
But yeah. So I think it's just, for me, I can still watch it and understand that level. Because I think everybody goes through some kind of traumatic experience at some point. When you get to, I'm aging myself, but when you get to be my age, I mean, you experience loss at some point. You're going to experience, fighting with a best friend or sibling, or, even something terrible might happen to you that you either suppress or you grow from. And I can watch Stand By Me, and I can watch movies that are similar to Stand By Me and still relate to that on some level. Just because I wasn't a 12-year-old boy, but like you said, we were all 12 at one point. And I can remember a lot of things of my 10, 11, 12, and then even my early high school years that are just like, I miss being at home and in the 4th grade where everything was easy and I could just play with my friends. And then you're starting to get into hormones, puberty, like you grow apart from the friends that you thought you'd have forever in elementary school. You go to different high schools, so you don't see each other anymore. It's very different now because everyone has the internet. You have cell phones. You can get in touch with each other like that. There's people on my Facebook that I haven't spoken to in like 25 years, but they're still there. And I'm just like, I could reach out and say hi if I wanted to. I don't want to, but I could. So it's different. It was different growing up in my age, and I'm sure Bob, because we didn't, like, the most I had in high school was a pager. And that was when I was like a senior in high school. That was how we got in touch with each other, was a pager,
Right. Right.
So I just think the experience for me, I can see it. I can relate to it on some level. But on the other hand, like Hannah said, being a girl growing up, it's just kind of a different kind of trauma, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I don't think boys can understand, just because, and I can't really understand, I'm sure, what you or Bob would have gone through at 12 and 13 and, finding who you are and having parents who expect you to be one thing or wish you were one thing. You know what I mean?
I think what this movie explores in a pretty interesting way, kind of similar to The Outsiders, which we spoke about a year ago on the show.
Mhm.
But in another movie, and again, like, I was really struck by this movie because I didn't think that this movie would have this element of like allowing young men
Yeah.
to be vulnerable and like show their emotions with each other, and like the love that young men can share for each other, which I think is something that is like so often missing from pieces of media, and just like how we talk about young boys, like, oh, like you have to be strong and you're not allowed to, and that means you can't cry and you can't show emotions, otherwise you're this word or that word or this thing and that, and all of those kinds of things. And like, it is important for young boys and young men to like be able to see that, like, no, if you're hurting, like, you can confide in the friends who you love.
Yeah.
Like, we want you to be able to confide in like your parents and your family, but like sometimes you're not able to do that because of whatever reason, your parents are neglectful or abusive or whatever it may be. But like, you can still show your friends that you love them and that you care about them. And it's something that like young boys and young men aren't taught enough. And to me, I think it's kind of crazy that this movie, for like as much love as it gets, I have like never heard anyone talk about it in that regard, because to me, that's like one of the most amazing things about this movie. because that's
Yeah.
something that we should be teaching young boys.
Yeah.
So I guess with that, you guys brought up a lot of other really, really, really great points of things that I want to talk about. But since we're kind of talking about the like trauma that a lot of these boys are experiencing within their home lives, maybe we talk about that for a little bit. So this movie came out in 1986 and takes place in 1959. The 80s, there were a lot of movies, and just like the whole decade was kind of defined by like this fond look back on the 50s as like this amazing time. And this movie is doing a really interesting thing of like playing with that idea where it is being told from the perspective of the older Gordy, but he's looking back on, you know, this summer with his friends or like this trip with his friends. And the whole trip like kind of sucks. And like everything around it sucks. Like, dude, it is like shitty for them. Like this dude's dad is hitting him, and this dude's dad is putting his ear to the stove, and this guy's mom thinks that he's the one who should have died. And like all of that stuff is going on. They're getting knives pulled on them by older, you know, teenagers and whatever. And the whole story is like it has this like feeling of nostalgia.
Yeah.
So like no matter how shitty everything with it is, it's just like,
remember how shitty the 50s were?
Yeah. They're all trauma bonded, right? Like I think there's something to be said about like an experience that you can't possibly explain in its totality to anybody but the people who experienced it with you.
Exactly.
Because like you're right, if they were to if Gordy were to just write like sequentially, here's what happened, and like not include any of the emotions, not include any of the closeness, it's like, bro, you good? Like we'll talk about it. Like, but for him, it's just like, yeah, like these sucky things happen, but what's the last thing he types on that old ass computer? Like, never had friends like the ones I had when I was 12. Like, and I never will. And it's like, good, because you probably won't get run over by a train again. Like, yeah, it's rough, man.
But it's like nostalgia is so great. Oh, sorry, go for it, Bob.
No, my wife and I have this description of experiences that you go through that are not necessarily great experiences, that you have a lot of trauma or it's just a difficult experience, but afterwards you're kind of glad you did it, and you talk about it a lot as this thing that you did that was great, and we call that type 2 fun. Type 1 fun is real fun. Type 2 fun. So if we're in the middle of something and it's going really crappy, we look at each other and are like, type 2 fun? Oh yeah, it's type 2 fun.
But you're still having fun. That's sweet.
That is adorable.
Yeah.
But like being 12 is kind of type 2 fun. Being 12
the entire year
with shitty parents is type 2 fun.
Yeah.
Being 12 with shitty parents in 1959 is type 2 fun.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
And it makes you wonder too what he would be like, because Gordy's narrating it. So it's like you could always think, well, he's looking back, so maybe he's looking back with like rose-colored glasses. You know, he's saying that, oh, the deer scene, oh, it was just for me, and well, you know, whatever, and him and Chris being able to talk to each other and cry with each other. But you could think that, but at the same time, it's like they went through so much shit. Like how you can't make that up. He could have made it all like, oh, he was a great guy and he was this and that, and they were all like, they had their problems. They were 12, but I believe there's the unreliable narrator in so many of these movies now. You're like, was it like that, or was that just what they remember? But it's like, no, everything, you said it, everything. It was such a shitty 2 days for them, the leeches and not having hardly any food and the train coming at them. And it's like, how did these kids not die or get mangled or something? I mean, when they found the body and Ace came down with his knife, I was like, and I agreed with Chris, they earned that body. Like they went through so much shit just to get there. Let them take the credit for finding it. But yeah, it's nostalgia it fucks with you, man, because you might think to yourself, oh, I do it all the time. Like, God, I wish I was back in like the 90s. That was the best era. I had so much fun in the 90s. But I'm sure if I went back into the 90s and I was that age, I'd be like, this sucks. I need to go back
nostalgia.
To the future.
Nostalgia is the craziest. It's the craziest drug. And whenever we talk about the good old days, we often we look at them with, rose tinted glasses or whatever, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, like maybe it did seem like it was more fun because we were 12, but also like maybe it kind of sucked.
Yeah.
And I think
We just
the
didn't know
fact
it.
the fact that this movie again like comes out in the year that it does and takes place when it does, and like Back to the Future,
Yeah.
everything Amblin, like that was coming out in the 80s is like
E.T.,
very much
yeah.
so like we are trying to recreate the amazing times that were the 50s. And then Stand By Me comes along and it's like, yeah, like we're all fond for the 50s and we have fond memories, but also it kind of sucked.
Sucked
I
all
saw
the time.
I saw a tweet once that said like, I don't get why everyone's so nostalgic about the 50s. Like we still have milkshakes and we still have racism. Like
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not living there. We just don't have the poodle skirts anymore,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
hanging our laundry out on the line outside. I'm sure some people still do that, but yeah, things are
Yeah.
different, but they're still the same in
So
so many
like, I mean,
ways.
Bob, I'll pose this question to you, but like going back to what we were saying at the front end of the episode, where it's like, like kids these days, they'll never get to experience riding around town on their bikes without having to, having all the freedom of doing whatever it is that they want to do with their friends. But also maybe like, isn't it good that kids don't do that and stumble across dead bodies?
Well, it, it's that question about is now really less safe than it was back then, or is it just that we've become way more aware of how unsafe
Yeah.
everything is? Because I know bad
Crime rates
stuff
are as low as
happened.
they were in the 60s.
What's
Like,
that?
since crime rates right now
Oh yeah,
are about as low as they were in the early 60s,
yeah,
especially when it comes to like violent crimes against kids and like kidnappings, abductions, and all that. But the perception is you can't let a kid ride around on their bike.
well,
But
but the question is it a cause and effect, right? Is it because we're
yeah,
not letting kids go out anymore?
There's no one to snatch off
It's
the
like all the
street.
predators are like, well, hell, but or is it just that
Darn.
it's all at the same level, but we have
Hannah's not pleased with us joking about.
No, sorry, that's my thinking face. I think a big thing too though about like random crime against children is it was post 1950s when we learned like decades later that we learned that most violence against children isn't random acts of violence from strangers. It's
It's
violence
their
from
family.
family members,
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
violence from family friends, it's violence from the
Yeah.
so really like I don't think keeping your kids from riding their bike is the problem. I think like teaching your kids, I mean stranger danger is a hoax, right? So teaching your kids like don't get in anyone's car, don't park next to a windowless van, learn how to get
Yep.
out of wrist restraints, like sure, but
Yep.
also it's hey, this is why Uncle Terry's kind of creepy. Like this is why
Yeah.
like teaching your kids what's not what if your weird uncle tells you to keep
Yeah.
a secret, maybe that's not cool. Talk to mom about it. Like
Yeah.
that's actually the danger, but people
Yeah.
that's a whole that's
I mean, and
so many
that's
other layers, right?
yeah, is so true for so many things. I mean, I watch a ridiculous amount of true crime, which is probably why I don't want my kids outside because I'm like, everybody don't trust people at all ever. But it is the majority of violence against anyone is usually somebody they're close to rather than somebody off the street. That's why I think when somebody gets taken by a random person is so terrifying because it doesn't happen
mhm.
all that often, and it's just that's my mindset. I was leaving the house the other day with my husband and kids, and our neighbor just has like this old mirror out by their mailbox. So I'm assuming to be thrown away, but our trash can's like we're not picking that up unless you call it in. So it's been sitting there forever. And then another neighbor has like an old suitcase out on the curb, just sitting there. And I'm like, so we're passing by, and it's like, I'm like, there might be a dead body in there. And he's like, your mind is disturbing. And I was like, well, you just
That's
don't know.
definitely
You would probably
definitely
smell
true
it by
crime.
now if that helps.
I don't know. It's been raining
Oh
a
my
lot, so
God.
I'm assuming I probably would. But
Yeah.
it's just like that's when I leave the house, that's what I see. So I'm just like, I don't want my kids out unless I can watch them. I have to be able to see them.
How old
Here's
are
a
your
weird
kids?
question.
Oh.
Do we think that the boys in Stand By Me were safer on their adventure than they would have been in their tricky home situations?
Yes. Because they're not getting abused or neglected. They're with friends. They're having fun with each other. Safety you look at the train scene. They could have been flattened like that, and that's terrifying. But now they have a fun story to tell people when they're older. But yeah, look at Teddy's ear. It was like, I know they use clay or something on that, but it's deformed. It's like, is he safer running from a train and jumping off onto a hill than he is
And
with
it's
his
more
dad?
fun to say, I
I
jumped.
beat a train. Yeah.
Yeah, I jumped
Than
from
my
in front of a
dad.
train than
I just,
my dad.
And Vern
Yeah,
running
I
by
would-
himself, Vern would not have done
he
the
would
trick.
not have, without
Oh,
Gordy,
yeah.
he would have
Gordy
been
was
dead.
like cheering him on.
Yeah.
So like there's the encouragement
Yeah.
and the adrenaline from that
Move your
experience.
fat
you know?
ass.
Yeah,
Like,
holy
come on.
cow.
Like, not now, Gordy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, also though, between four boys, they brought 2 canteens and no
Yeah, they did
food
not plan properly.
and $2.
They were
in
not
cash.
prepared.
Yeah,
They were
and
not
I think
prepared.
that added just to like kind of the innocence of it that like
Yeah.
nobody thought, but also 12-year-old girls would have brought food.
We would have brought food.
Well, yeah.
We would have brought
all
food.
kinds of provisions. We would
Yeah.
not. We really
Everybody would
brought
have had
a
lips,
brush,
like chapstick.
Yeah, Vern did bring the comb. That was important. But we would have had the sunscreen. We would have had food.
Everyone would have had
prepared.
socks. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, we would have been good. We would have had a lot of fun.
But
I was horrified that they brought a firearm with absolutely no firearms
No
training whatsoever.
Right.
I mean, we brought guns when I would go out with my friends, but they were our 22 rifles
Yeah.
that were unloaded, and you know that Chris gives Gordy the pistol with the safety off and a chamber loaded.
Yep.
I'm like, maybe
That's
you
rock and
should
roll,
stay
brother.
home. Maybe you guys.
yeah.
But I mean, that's very true to kids that age. They don't have the
Oh, yeah.
mentality of like, we are not invincible. Like they think they are. I mean, they have their crappy home lives, but every kid I think that age believes like, I can do whatever. I'm going to be all right. I mean, look at what they did on their trip.
Yeah.
I'm sure a few times they were like, oh shit, like the train. Other than that, they weren't thinking about could be wolves or coyotes in those forests until they heard them. Like, it's just, you have that mentality that's like, nothing bad is going to happen to them out in the world. It all happens to them at home.
Or
Right.
that they're like, we're just going to find the body and then we're just going to tell the police and then we're going to be heroes and nobody's going to question why we know
How did you
that the
know?
body's there. Nobody's
Yeah.
going to question. They'll be so proud of us. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel
We're
like if this
thinking
movie-
about the trauma of seeing a dead body at 12
Yeah.
years old.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, nobody. Yeah,
I mean, at
Or
this
like
point,
the idea that like this kid's like parents are looking for him and like
Yeah.
there's
looking
like that
for
whole
him,
or
yeah.
just like the like sadness of like a young boy losing his life. They're just like, that's crazy. Let's go see what's up with
Go
that.
find it.
wonder what happens if you poke it. Yeah, boys are
Yeah.
dumb.
but that's the moment in the movie too where the kids
Yeah.
become. That's their transition moment to
Yeah.
adulthood when they realize that this kid is a person and they
Right.
can't just treat it like
Yeah.
an objective. And that's where they become more of an adult than the teenagers who are doing the same exact thing that they are, except they're driving a car. Those teenagers never learn that lesson, but they treat
And
him
there's-
like a human being.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you guys think that those teenagers probably come from like similar home situations where they are also abused and mistreated, but maybe they don't have the capacity to like have the emotional intelligence to like tell their friends that they love them or confide in them that they feel hurt by the world or anything like that? Like, I don't know if you guys have given any thought to that. That was kind of just something that popped up as Bob was saying it.
I guess it's Vern's older brother and Chris's older brother are
Yeah.
Yeah,
two
they're
of the
there.
bullies.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because later in the movie, as you heard, like what happened after we found the body, it you
Yeah.
know, is I don't care if it's Vern or if it's Teddy, that kind of goes down that path, right? Like
Mhm.
as Chris and Gordy go the college class route, in middle school, the other two kind of veer towards the
Not so great.
I don't know what the
Yeah.
slang that they used, the greaser life, right? And so
Right.
you kind of get that. I mean, it's interesting to see just like what that trauma response is because
Mhm.
I'm sure those older boys have seen some shit, right? Like they've
Yeah. And done
But-
some shit.
done some shit. But I mean that
Yeah.
they're that, you know, was it Eyeball? Is that one of the older brothers? I think
Yeah.
you look what Chris has two older brothers and the middle one is one of the bullies. But the older
Yeah.
one is just as, you know, JD, juvenile delinquent, like just as
Yeah, they're all they
far
all have a
gone.
reputation.
Right. So it's
Yeah.
like you don't get like that
Yeah.
without having experienced something really sucky, right?
Yeah, well,
I-
that's what
I
makes
always-
it interesting too. With sorry, just real quick, that's what
No,
makes
you
it
go ahead.
interesting that Chris is the youngest. So, but he's probably the most emotionally mature out of his family that we've seen, and you really only see. I mean, Teddy has his breakdowns and stuff, but he's always trying to be like, "I'm fine, leave it alone." But Chris and Gordy are the two that are able to be emotionally open to each other and talk about the serious shit. Vern is kind of just Vern, and Teddy's dealing with his own crap. But those two are the ones who are able to talk to each other and say, "You're better than this. You're gonna make something of yourself. You can make something of yourself." You don't really hear that with the other two. So I think that's a big reason why you see them go off, and Chris can become an attorney, and Gordy becomes a writer. But the other two don't really follow that path, and you didn't really see a whole lot of that vulnerability between those two with the others.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Chris, at least he's the one that's always kind of attempting that emotional connection, because there's that moment after he
Yeah.
rescues Vern from the train, which is way closer from my memory reading it in the novel. It's like he's going to get hit by that train unless he
yeah.
and he makes him stand there and holds out his hand. You got to give me some skin. We have to make this right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we don't leave things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that moment. And so
Yeah.
Chris is the one that has the most emotional intelligence out of any of the kids, really.
Yeah.
Which,
So,
like-
and it's kind of a sad coda to everything, that it's a moment where he's doing the same thing, trying to find peace between two
Yeah.
parties that
Before we
causes
get
his death. So,
before we get to that ending,
Mhm.
we have gone a pretty long time without talking about like one of the things that makes this movie so great, which is the fact that the four leads in this all deliver amazing performances.
Oh yeah.
Obviously
Yeah,
highlighted
holy
by
cow.
River Phoenix, like
Mhm.
giving like one of the best performances of a like young actor that we've ever seen. And
Yeah.
now I totally understand like why people are like he was gone way too soon.
Oh yeah.
Like you see this and then like the legend of like, or not the legend, but like what actually ended up happening to him in real life then kind of like reinforces the tragedy of this movie. But
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, I'm just gonna lay out for a little bit for the three of you guys. You can go first. What do you think of the four leads in this and how great they are?
I'll give you my favorite fact is that this was Jerry O'Connell's first acting thing ever.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
no small background role. This is his first credit, which
Yeah.
is like the biggest flex.
Yeah.
I mean, so cool. I saw him. I don't know if you guys have watched the Taylor Tomlinson show After Midnight, but she has like it's kind of like a celebrity game show type
Oh, yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she has them all on the couch, and Jerry O'Donnell's one of the guests, and she's like, "What was like the terrible things you had to do earlier in your career?" And he was like, "Well, my first role was
Yeah.
Stand By Me, so I'm gonna not be part of this question." And it was so funny. He's so charming and cute. I love him so much. But
Big Knicks fan.
yeah,
Important to me.
Married to Rebecca Romaine.
there you go.
I think he did pretty well for himself, honestly.
Honestly, yeah. Going.
I have to admit,
Yeah.
he was in a show called Sliders, which came
I
out
loved Sliders.
in the
Loved
90s.
Sliders. Yeah.
And I was like, that's the fat kid from Stand By
Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
What the hell happened? Well,
Man,
puberty,
Sliders
I
was
guess.
good.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just
Yeah.
tell it's baby fat. You know, like
Yeah.
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 he's now with that chisel. I mean, he's so handsome, and it's just like
Yeah.
sweet little glow up. We love to see it.
And they all get a chance to shine. Like they all get there's no one throwaway character. There's not like Gordy and Chris and then these two little, hanger-ons. They all have a story.
Mm-hmm.
They all have like their moment. I think that's what I love about Rob Reiner directing this is he doesn't just focus on one. Like he gives them all a chance to show what they can do. And, even when Teddy's being a complete asshole, like you still like feel for him because, of what he went through with his dad. And I love that he had Corey Feldman, was always pretending like he was at war because his dad was in Vietnam. And he was like, despite how his dad treated him, he was so protective of his dad, defensive of his dad. He's always pretending he's got the gun and he's shooting out in war when he's holding the gun, protecting them at night. Like, he looks up to his dad so much despite his dad's mental health and how his dad treats him. And that was like, I know River Phoenix is amazing. Every time they have their conversation about him with the milk money and how the teacher stole the milk money back. Man, I wanted to find her and like,
yeah, no kidding.
Fancy new skirt. Yeah.
Bought herself a new skirt because it was him and everyone knew he was a loser and they would never believe him. And that scene always gets to me, but it's when Teddy is getting pissed off at, who's the Chopper's owner, the guy who.
Oh yeah, I can't remember his name.
I just watched it. I can't remember his name.
It starts with an M.
Yeah, he just gets so.
That's all I got.
All he has to do is bring up his dad, and Teddy loses it, and it's just like, this guy treats you like shit, but it's like he's still his dad, and he understands like why he fought in Vietnam, like he's a hero, and
Storm the beaches of Normandy.
Yeah, so it's just like it's the fact that all four of them could give such great performances at that age, because I know a lot of times child acting is a hit or miss kind of thing, and you have to be a really good director to get the really good performances out of them. So I think that really speaks to Rob Reiner, and I know I've read things about this movie that he had a lot of patience with them on set. Like he would get down to their level. He would talk to them. You know, he never treated them like kids. And I think that's part of the reason why this movie was so good. Cause it wasn't like, oh, this acting's a little, you know, as the youth would say, sus or whatever. But it's not good. No, but they all give such great performances and it all holds up really well. So
I remember reading Will Wheaton saying that Rob Reiner actually gave them time to just hang out together, all four of them,
get to know each other
and get to know each other. And saying basically how the group shook out is how the group is. He's like, he basically hired the kids that appear in the film because that was, you know, River Phoenix was naturally their leader, and he was the more nerdy, reserved one, and Corey Feldman was always a little bit crazier than everybody else.
Always.
And for, you know, so they have such naturalistic performances in part because those are who they were at that moment in time. So
I mean,
stuff.
I think like it's interesting that all four of these leads have had like real life trauma that kind of mirrors the trauma of their characters. Like Jerry O'Connell like had like a lot of like body image issues because of this role and just like how he looked and presented as a kid. Obviously River Phoenix was dealing with like all kinds of demons that came out in the ways that they came out. I can't remember if I read anything specific about Will Wheaton. And then like Corey Feldman, like he talks a lot about how his parents were like abusive and like took advantage of him and how he was like sexually abused within Hollywood as a young actor. And like, so like these kids were bringing like super raw emotions to these performances. And like, again, like they're all brilliant. It's not even just like good for child actors. Like the four of them are really, these are like really knockout performances. And you guys spoke about it, but a lot of it goes to Rob Reiner. And like, there've been a lot of Rob Reiner movies that we've talked about on the Canon.
So good.
What does he have? Like he has some special sauce.
At least in those movies, like back to back, it was like When Harry Met Sally, Misery, Stand By Me, Princess Bride, like that. Just
that run,
spectrum,
golden era,
that run,
it
was just it's unmatched to me. And I know people are like, oh, Martin Scorsese, this. I'm like, if you want to ask me, like Rob Reiner in the 80s was like, he was on top of it. He's able to do so many different genres that it's just like, I mean, to go from When Harry Met Sally into Misery, they were like right after each other, is, I don't know how he does it. And
both love stories of a kind. So.
very different love stories. You could say Misery is a rom-com if you want to. I could.
It's funny to someone, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Some people are like, Annie Wilkes is my hero. But yeah, it's
Stay away
God,
from those
he's
people.
Seriously.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I
No,
think
but
that yeah, I'm convinced it's just because he's a really nice guy. And I know
he
that like
is.
is belittling it, but I think like there's this subset of people that think you have to be crazy to be a genius and to create good art. And it's like,
Right.
that's just not true. Like, yeah, Hitchcock got away with it, but like we all kind of know he's kind of a dick. And so like
Yeah.
for I think particularly when you're working with children, like
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have read Tom Felton's memoir. He played Draco Malfoy.
Ugh.
It's delightful. I love a celebrity memoir. But he talks about filming the first two movies.
Yeah.
Chris Columbus directed them. And like he did a lot of the same things, like really was incredibly protective, very playful, very kind, like understood that he's dealing with like Alan
Children.
Rickman, you know, like he's dealing with
Yeah.
like this. And then he's also got these like baby children,
Brand new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just the level of like taking like 3 extra seconds to think about what's like holistically the best thing for this child
Yeah.
created something really beautiful. And so
Yeah.
I like to think that it's just because Rob Reiner is like a kind and
He's a
considerate
nice
person. He's a nice guy. And he
There's a
makes good-
saying
good art.
people never do. You never hear people doing method acting for a really kind character. It's always to be like the worst
Right.
person in the world.
God, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which and his kindness kind of comes through in a lot of his movies. Hannah, Brian,
Yeah.
and I were
Yeah.
talking about it during our This Is Spinal Tap discussion.
Love
But,
that movie. Love
Like
it.
all of his, a ton of great movies. Like you can throw around the M word. I don't know if I would for Rob Reiner, but I really appreciate everything that he's done.
Me-
Masterpiece.
Meathead.
Yeah, I was like,
Meathead. I was gonna say he was good in that too.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have like a distinct visual style or anything like that. Like his
Yeah.
movies are really clean. They're super efficient in terms of like how they're presented and how the stories are told, which is in itself an extremely impressive form of storytelling. Like the Teddy character, we know everything we need to know about his relationship with his dad based on him pretending that he's in war and him saying that his dad stormed the beaches of Normandy. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, that dude has PTSD. He abuses you because he has PTSD, and you have like some form of like Stockholm syndrome or whatever. Like you're just like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's sick, and I love him because he's my dad, even though he like beats the shit out of me.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
have
just
to
like
find
a
something good about him. Otherwise,
Yeah.
who am I? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
You come
Yeah.
from that, yeah.
And it's just with like a few lines of dialogue, and like we know everything that we need to know about this character and his backstory, and that's true of all the
Mhm.
characters.
Yeah.
Which again speaks to Rob Reiner. Bob, I feel like you were going to jump in with something else
I was not.
about Robbie. Oh, okay.
No.
He's like, no.
No. Not at all. I think
I would say that
you
he
all
has
said it
3
well. Yeah.
masterpieces, though. Yeah.
Ooh,
I would say he's got 3.
let's go.
3
What are
N
they?
words. I would say The Princess Bride is a masterpiece.
Yes.
I would say When Harry Met Sally is a masterpiece. And I would
Yeah.
say Stand By Me is a masterpiece.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Those are my 3 of his movies. I love Misery. Stephen King
But,
fan.
yeah.
But those are the 3 movies that like I have like 5 stars on Letterboxd. Log in every time. 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. And I don't think that's ever going to change. But those 3 movies, like I think Stand By Me maybe a little bit less than Princess Bride and When Harry Met Sally, but those 2 movies especially still stand the test of time in terms of iconic cinema. Like people still quote both of those movies. And I think Stand By Me is a very underrated coming of age movie. I mean, you type in coming of age movies in Google, it's going to come up.
Of course.
But when you talk to some people,
Absolutely.
like, have you seen Stand By Me? Oh, no, I haven't seen that one. Like, oh my God. Like, they see Stephen King, they think horror, they think, sci-fi. And I'm like, Stephen King can write drama and family and children, and there doesn't have to be any bit of horror. The horror is growing up. Like, if you read a lot of Stephen King, Bob, I know you do, or at least I think you do. The parents in these books are fucking awful 99% of the time. The parents are the worst. The parents are the monsters. And as the kids growing up, that's the horror they have to deal with. And I see that a lot in Stand By Me. They're going to see a body you're like, oh God, this is creepy. But no, it's their home life that is the scary part of the entire novella and the film. So,
And growing
I,
up to some extent.
yeah, and
Yeah.
adolescence itself is terrifying. So,
Yeah.
you just
Hannah,
gotta-
are you
I'll go for
Am I a big?
Stephen King fan?
it.
Um, it's not a genre I like gravitate towards necessarily for my
Mhm.
books. I don't like Shawshank Redemption. I'm just gonna say it loud and proud. I don't like that movie. I haven't seen the book. I don't like the
I'm
movie.
done. Sorry.
Yep,
I'm
sorry.
done.
I gotta go.
I'm so sorry. Okay, so
We're out.
here's the thing. I did not see Shawshank till like a year ago. And there's this category of film that's movies that won Best Picture in the 90s.
Okay.
That just like, or like movies that got critical acclaim in the 90s that are just
Yeah.
like not my vibe. Like I love Titanic, but like The Color Purple, and it's a great story. I don't like the way it's created. Shawshank's just very like, let me pluck all your little heartstrings. It's a cool story. I'm sorry. I need to read the book. Anyway, so I love
The
you
book's
all,
good.
though.
It's a novella. It's not too long.
Nice save. Nice
Yeah,
save.
I mean, it's fine. Everybody has their flaws. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I love this movie. I've seen it maybe 3 or 4 times, and this is the first time I read it. I think so. I'm 34, and I maybe I'm just at the age where it took a while for Stand By Me to find me, right? So like if you talk about
Yeah.
those 3 masterpieces, like
Yeah.
Princess Bride, huge part of my childhood. When Harry Met
Mhm.
Sally, a little bit older, huge part of that too. Like that's girls' nights in. Like that's,
Yeah.
So those found me easily. Did not have to seek them out. I agree that they're masterpieces, and I agree that both of those movies, there's very few people who I would be like, you shouldn't watch this, you won't like it, And
Yeah.
I feel that way about Stand By Me, but I think just because of like, it came out 5 years before I was born.
Mhm.
That's weird. So it took a bit to get there. And I think because I didn't see Shawshank till like,
Yeah.
was that 94, 90, something like that?
94.
So I saw that a good like 20 years later, and I wasn't like drawn in by the style because it was 20 years ago. Anyway, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry about Shawshank. So anyway, Stephen King as a whole, I loved Misery. I didn't see
When
it
did you first come to Stand By Me?
after college, like in my 20s, probably. But I think it was because like those VH1 style like child stars we lost too soon like countdowns, and they kept talking about River Phoenix and how he was this big guy lost. Like, who is River Phoenix? I had no idea who he was.
Yeah.
I like learned his whole story. I learned about the Viper Room. I learned all these things. I've seen My Own Private Idaho. I saw that
Mhm.
after I saw this the first time, but I was
Mhm.
like, okay, Stand By Me, I should see it. Like, let's get around to it. So it was very much like trying to catch up on
Yeah.
pop culture that brought me to Stand By Me, and I'm so thankful for that. But and I love a coming of age. I love a coming of age favorite
Yeah.
category. So
Yeah.
I don't know, what other Stephen King have I seen?
I don't know.
I don't
You've
know
seen The
either.
Shining. You guys
Oh,
spoke
I
about The Shining
love
on
The
What a
Shining.
Picture.
Yeah.
Love The Shining. That's not the
Yeah.
90s. I love. Oh, that's a whole nother level of trauma.
Yeah.
Anyway,
A very different kind of trauma.
very different kind
Yeah.
of trauma of the mediocre man. Anyway, so
But so this is kind of well, maybe not the prelude, because I would say that these guys are more exceptional than they give themselves credit for, and that the world gives them credit for, which
Yeah.
I think is something that we've spoken about, but is something that is very interesting. Just the idea that these 4 characters are kind of like born into a world that they like know rejects them, and they're fighting so hard as 12-year-olds to like against that, to like find some sort of acceptance or like
Yeah.
some validity within the world, which is obviously that's the whole conversation that Chris and Gordy have. And it's something that like Vern and Teddy unfortunately sort of like succumb to. Like they're just like,
Yeah.
okay, like this is how it's going to be. And that was another thing that I was like really shocked by this movie allowing itself to like get into as a topic. And so Bob, we sort of spoke about this on the front end, but are you familiar with like how autobiographical this book / movie is for Mr. King?
That's a good question. And you can't help but wonder. He has a number of author characters
Mm-hmm.
in his oeuvre of books, but
Right.
I don't know. I think he explores different aspects of his childhood and his character as a writer through those things. I don't know how distinct, because I know where he grew. He grew up like 20 minutes up the road from where I live now, in a small town called Durham, and there's the house that's in Salem's Lot. The Marsden House is an actual building
Yeah.
in Durham that you can drive by and
That's
stuff.
cool.
And I know he had a small town upbringing and his small town upbringing in Maine. So I'm sure some of it, he's told a story in, it might have been Dance Macabre, about going with some friends. They found a dead cat, and like them all going and like watching the dead cat and the maggots and flies and all that stuff, and how that affected him a lot as a kid. So I'm
Yeah.
sure that
Yeah.
there are some of that, some stories, some aspects of that definitely have come in. And he's talked about like Carrie. He knew Carrie White as a character, as a marginalized person in society, were people that he knew in the town that he grew up in. And I'm like, I knew characters like every one of these characters in Stand By Me in my own small town, so I can only assume he knew, because we grew up in similar situations, that he knew some of these things as well.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. I was just, I mean, because I don't know much about Mr. King. I'm not the biggest fan. I don't think I've read any Stephen King, but I do enjoy many uh, adapted versions of his stories and books into movies.
I have no choice, because I grew up in Maine, and Uncle Stevie's like, we
Yeah.
export two things:
He belongs
Yeah.
to you.
lobsters and Stephen
And
King,
Stephen King,
and
yeah.
gross generalizations.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah.
It's
Well, I
how
mean,
like
we've-
how
we've-
we in East Tennessee, you are not allowed to not adore Dolly Parton.
Oh,
Right.
It's
I mean,
unquestioned.
feel
I mean,
that
like
should be
it's not
universal,
hard, but yeah,
Yeah.
like yeah. I mean, come on, it's
Interesting.
just
In
how it is.
Ohio,
Yeah.
we
What's the
have
Ohio?
Jeffrey Dahmer. So
Jonestown. You got
Yeah.
a lot. Yeah, you got a lot going on.
I mean,
Nice.
no, I mean for real though. In Ohio, I can't. I mean, John Glenn, maybe.
Was Ed Gein from Ohio?
I hope not.
I think he was
don't know.
Wisconsin.
I
Oh,
think he
you're
was
probably
Midwest,
right.
but yeah, I mean, we can claim the Midwest. We can go with that if you want, but Ohio, I think Ohio's pretty.
I'm sorry to
chill.
generalize a whole
Yeah.
part of the.
But
Sorry about that.
you know,
No.
causation, correlation.
Yeah, we've had some serial killers come through our state that you might have heard of. So I don't know. I mean,
So maybe your paranoia about letting your children outside is.
I think I
more
am very
founded
valid in that
Ohio.
paranoia.
Yeah.
Justify.
Yes.
That's why you
Yeah.
love the true crime docs. It's a
Man.
deeply ingrained just part of
Yeah.
you as a Midwesterner that
Yeah.
I
you.
don't know. It's my comfort TV. I don't know. So
That's
I have to
okay.
watch it.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on the end of the episode. Have we figured out who among us represents which of the four main characters in Stand By Me? I feel like we haven't examined each other enough to know who might be who.
This could get mean real fast.
We're
I'm gonna need to.
call into
I'm not gonna need
other
to hear some
kinds of
personal
slurs.
trauma first. So.
Seriously,
Oh God, we
let's
don't want to
see.
do that.
Everyone have all their
No.
ears.
Oh man,
I have
I
my
need to look at
ears.
everyone's ears.
I'm wearing glasses, but so is Ref. So I would think that one of us would be Teddy, but I would say you would be Gordy, just because you're chill.
Who are you pointing
You.
at? Me? My dad did fight in. He's a veteran. He
There
didn't
you
storm
go.
the beaches of Normandy.
That's Teddy. Yeah.
Yeah, but he also never held my ear to a stove.
Yeah.
which was pretty chill. That's like a pretty chill way to
Do you have
grow
a
up.
brother?
I
Did he
don't have any
die?
brothers.
Did he die in a Jeep
die?
accident?
Any
Can
dead
we also
brothers?
give a quick?
Was
can we
he
also give a
John
quick
Cusack?
shout out?
Oh,
Yes,
sorry.
let's give a shout
Yeah.
out. No, that's exactly it. Can we give a shout out to John Cusack for his few flashbacks, because I think this was before he really hit dreamy 80s. You know,
He was
icon.
dreamy enough, but it's
He
fine.
was. I was
yeah.
like, Danny, why'd you have to die? No,
He's the perfect
You agreed
big
with Gordy's
brother,
parents.
too, yeah.
I did. I was like, why
Perfect.
could it have been Will Wheaton? No, it was. I really enjoyed those scenes just because you saw how supportive he was of Gordy, even when
It's
his
really
parents
sweet.
kept trying to push him toward, like, he's the golden child and let's talk about baseball and girls, and then he kept trying to bring his parents back to Gordy. So I think, you know, they lost an idealized son, and Gordy lost like his big brother, and I think that might, I mean, as a parent, I can't imagine, you know, that, but they also had another child that they completely like forgot even existed. So I feel kind of like Gordy really bore the grunt of all that grief. I think maybe even more so than his parents did.
Yeah.
And so
He
And
lost
then
his
his dad
parents.
badmouths
Yeah.
his friends.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Chris is the closest, like, is a replacement
he
big
had
brother almost.
to a brother. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's the end of that. And I don't think, and you can, Hannah, you can remind me because you just read it. It's been a while since I've read The Body. But I don't think that they reveal Chris actually died until the end of the novella.
Correct.
I believe.
Yeah.
That
And it
was
was-
the most devastating
Yeah.
moment for me. Like, reading a Stephen King novel, I hit a lot of those moments where I'm like, what the when I get upset and I want to throw my book. And that was really, really shocking and like painful for me, even though I should have seen it coming, because
Sure.
Vern and Teddy both die in the book too. Like he
Mhm.
describes, I think Vern died in a house fire, and I think Teddy died in a car accident. Like
Yeah.
later on, so they all passed except for Gordy. So it was Chris's death that was described. It was like he got out. He didn't think he made something of himself, and then
Mhm.
he was trying to help somebody in a fight and died. And it's just like, good God, like it's just devastating.
And Gordy says his response, because he's like, at the time my wife was pregnant, and so I went out to my
Yeah.
car and cried because I couldn't
Yeah.
like explain to her.
Couldn't do it in front of her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
oh,
And it is
that's
that
so
that
hard.
that
Oh.
last quote, and I'll
That's
think
awful.
about it all the time.
Yeah.
The quote where he says, "I never had friends again like I did when I was 12," and then he wrote,
Yeah.
I mean, does anybody? And that quote always makes me get a little misty eyed too, because being the age that I am now, and I remember the friends I had when I was 12, like in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I know their faces and their names. Haven't talked to them in years, and they've all moved on to California, wherever they have their families. Even if they weren't on my Facebook, I remember their faces at that age so well, and the stuff that we did so well. The people I went to high school with, I'm like, you could put someone in front of me right now, I'll be like, I don't know who you are. I don't recognize you. I don't know your name. But the kids that I hung around with at that age, where it was the freedom, the bike riding, and just having fun all summer and everything, like I remember those. So when I read that quote and I see it on the movie, it's just like a stab in my heart, because I'm like, I feel that
Yeah.
so much, and it's true. I mean, I have some friends. There's 2 women I went to high school with who were in my wedding. I'm still friends with them. We go out. We try to go out once a month to catch up and everything. It's very nice. But like my best friend at the moment, like I switch best friends all the time, is my sister, because she's the one I go to the
Yeah.
movies with all the time. Like we're close in
Yeah.
age, we hang out, and it's very, very nice. I can't get rid of her. But it's, you grow apart from people that you think that you're going to be friends with forever, even people you went to high school with. It's just people grow up and grow apart, and it's the saddest thing. And then when you hear like Gordy did with Chris has passed away, you have to kind of reconcile that person is gone. And I think he
Yeah.
said in the movie too, like I haven't seen him in 10 years, but I know I'll miss him every day. And it's just like, I wanted to yell at his kids coming in and be like, can we go to the pool now? I'm like, shut up. He's great.
Let you feel this. Yeah.
Let him cope.
Yeah.
Get out of the room. So it's
Man.
just,
It's
it's so
tough.
well done. Yeah.
It is.
I think the narrative choice to have it only be Chris that passes away makes
It was probably
the
smart.
death impact much more weighty. And then everything with like when you're 12, it's
It's
It's the
different.
best, you know.
Yeah.
It's everyone is pining for when they were 12. Everyone will
Yeah.
tell you SNL hasn't been funny since the cast
Since I
of
was-
when they were 12 years old.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
Baseball was only cool when a certain person was 12.
playing,
Like
yeah.
we all associate being 12 or 13 with like the world
best
being
time.
the greatest version of itself,
Yeah.
no matter what the world actually was. So like
Yeah.
Gordy will always remember being 12 as the best time of his life, despite the fact that him and his friends almost died in the fucking woods trying to
Several times.
find another kid who died while escaping all of their parents who almost killed them. Like everything
Ugh.
about it is terrible. And he's like,
That was
Awful.
terrible.
dude, being 12 was the best.
Okay,
We
I
had
just
such a
want to
great
say the SNL cast when I was 12:
Not great.
Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Bill
That's a
Hader,
great
Chris
cast.
Parnell, Fred Armisen, Maya Rudolph, like
Oh my god.
top tier.
My God,
can-
you had
So
to
See
good.
the gray hairs? Do you see the gray hairs starting to like?
Yeah, you know.
Good lord.
Can I tell you guys a story from when I was 12?
Yes.
Or around,
Please.
around that age about growing up in Maine that kind of explains a little bit why I identify with this movie. So I told you guys I grew up in northern Maine. It was a very small town, and there was not a lot of things to do for kids if you didn't like hunting and fishing. But one of the things that we liked to do was go to the dump and bait bears, which isn't like bear baiting, hunting, or anything like that. What it was the dump was not like it is now. Just everything would go into the dump and just get piled out there, and black bears would come and forage for food. And they got so used to people that people would actually go drive into it with their cars and feed bears out the window of their car. And for somehow some kids got this idea of going to the dump. And what we would do is we go to the back of the dump when we go down this steep hill to the edge of the dump, and then we would throw trash at the bears. And the goal was hit the bear would roar and charge at you. And you would run as fast as you could up this super steep hill. And the bears were generally fat and not really interested in catching you. So they would run out of steam halfway up the hill. And you'd get up to the top of the hill and we'd all be like, yeah, we did it. You know, we're the bravest people on earth, sort of thing. And so I had a friend, let's call him Douglas, who was very overweight. And he always wanted to go. Always wanted to go. And we were like, this is a bad idea. This is just going to end badly if you come. But he just kept at us until finally one day we all just gave up and we're like, fine, you can come with us. And it was a very long walk through the woods.
I know. It's like, oh God.
It was a very long walk through the woods. And we were like, I don't think he's going to make the walk. It'll be fine. But he made it, huffing and puffing, but he made it all the way to the dump. And we were like, we're here. Let's do it. So we all went down the hill, and there was only one bear in the dump that day, and he was a small, scrawny bear. We knew him quite well, but he was way out in the dump, and we were not stupid enough to get out into the trash to go after him. So we were just winging whatever we could to try and hit this bear, not coming anywhere near him. We're like, oh, too bad, Douglas, not going to be that day for you. He picks up a can and he wings it. And I remember thinking, there's no way he's going to hit that bear. It's a tin can. It's got no weight to it at all. And I watched that can go and bink right on that bear's snout. Bear roars, starts charging across, and we all book it up the hill. We're running, we're laughing.
Except Doug.
We get up. Yeah, we get up to the top. We're all laughing. Turn around to watch the bear come up the hill. And there's Douglas halfway up the hill on his hands and knees.
No.
He'd hit a rock and just planted face first in the dirt. And he's getting up on his hands and knees, and he just looks up, and I can still see his face clear as day, just caked in dirt, just his eyes, like looking at us. And the bear comes running right up to him and then skids to a stop like a foot behind him. and
shit.
like all of the kids were like, somebody moaned next to me. I heard a kid go, "Oh Jesus." And my heart just skipped a couple of beats. I thought, this is it. This is he's going to die. And the bear just stretched out its nose, took a sniff, turned around, looked back into the dump.
Oh my
And
God, Bob.
oh my
I hate
God,
it so much.
you know, it was
You
a
would not
long
be
back
here.
walk back. Yeah.
It's
It was
Yeah.
a long walk back into town, and
Here's
he broke
Bob's
down
life.
crying.
You
Yeah.
almost, I mean, that was
If
almost a
Doug
Stand By Me
dies,
moment. Yeah.
Bear leaves. Like
Yeah.
your
Bear-
path of life has completely shifted. If
Oh,
that bear gets that kid.
completely. And you know,
And
by the
that's
time
how
we got
Doug
back to
got mauled to
town,
death.
he was completely. He managed to suck it all up. You know, streaks of tears down his face.
I
but
was
he's
gonna
wiping
say,
it.
He's
yeah.
sobbing. Yeah.
And he didn't tell
He's
it.
got- That's a story. that
Yeah.
He has
Yeah.
to be telling that story even today. Let me tell you
And
about.
I don't know if he
bear.
ever did, but we ended up
That is
that was the end of the bear baiting. None of
I
us
was gonna ask,
ever
like,
went
how
back.
long until you went back? Okay, good.
But
Yeah.
through high school, we had a phrase that we used to say to each other: "Don't tease the bear if you can't make the hill."
Aww.
And like, I can't say that to anybody now
You could say
because
that.
who would know what I
don't
meant?
know. Who knows? Yeah. Well,
You
we
know?
know now.
Yeah,
You
we
can
know
say it
now.
to us.
Yeah. We'll spread it like wildfire.
That is insane.
Yeah,
That
so-
is the best
That's
story. Oh
so
my God.
that's so Stand By Me. The only thing that would have
Honestly.
made it more Stand By Me is if unfortunately Doug didn't make it.
Yeah.
And then another group of kids from your town were like, hey,
Did you hear about the kid in the
Let's
bear?
go.
wanna go see a
take
dead
this
body?
You wanna go see a dead
Yeah.
body? This bear mauled it.
Yeah.
Who knows what's
Oh my
left?
God. Well, I feel like that we have to
That
end
is
there.
insane.
That's
Yeah,
the
I don't
most
know how to-
appropriate
I
place
don't know
to
what
end.
to talk about now.
We
I'm
can
like
do
stressed out. I'm like
Yeah.
sweating. I'm stressed right now. Like
we can
hearing
do
that, 'cause I'm like-
recommendations, but like nothing's gonna be as thrilling as the story about Doug.
I have
and-
nothing.
When was the last time you talked to Doug? What's his life like now?
He's got a history degree and a theater degree.
Love that.
He lives in a town like maybe 20 minutes south of me, and I see him maybe once a year.
Aw.
So
Nice.
Do you talk about
we're
the
not
bear?
that close anymore. Yeah,
But-
and we do
Yeah.
not talk about it. Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Well,
I
You
would
even
Doug,
like,
if-
I
say-
was bringing
say the
that
little
up
statement?
every
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Like,
Doug,
do
if
you
you're
remember the
listening, we
bear?
love you.
We love you
We
so
love
much,
Doug.
Doug.
We're so
We
glad
love you,
that
Doug.
you survived.
Love you, Doug.
Oh my God.
All right. That's amazing. That's easily the best story that anyone's ever told
Absolutely.
on the show. So
Love it.
let's quickly do some recommendations. We'll power through them.
Yeah.
And we'll all be thinking about Doug as we're going through them. So for the order, I think we'll do Ramona, Hannah, Bob, Raph. You all know the deal. Recommending 3 things to check out. People like Stand By Me at least want us to be a movie. The other 2 things can be any and everything else. It could even be a story about Doug. So Ramona,
Man.
what's your first recommendation?
My first recommendation is the most obvious, I think, recommendation for this particular movie. I'm going to recommend The Goonies.
Yeah.
Because this was another movie that I grew up on. I mean, Stand By Me came a little bit later, but The Goonies goes back with me as far as my brain can remember. Was The Goonies. It's a coming of age story. It's a group of kids on an adventure. You got the Fratellis, just like you had Ace Merrill and his gang after them, and rather than see a dead body, they're looking for a treasure to save their neighborhood from the yuppies. Gotta love that. All the kids are great in it. It also has Corey Feldman playing a smartass named Mouth. I mean, I can't.
There's
John
fat shaming
Astin-
in that movie too.
Fat shaming in
There
that
is
with the
indeed.
Yeah.
truffle, the
Mhm.
chunk. What is
Yep.
it called?
Truffle
The
shuffle.
Truffle shuffle.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's fat shaming in that one too. But
I haven't seen it
also
all the way
has
through.
Oh my dear God! Oh, God, you guys are killing me
It's
today.
too late.
Okay.
It's too late for you.
It took me a while to get into that one too. Again, it's just being. It's,
All right,
it's the
Bob,
wrong
I'm just
age.
talking to you right now.
I know. I love it now. I just yeah.
I've seen like the first
it's-
30 minutes a few times, but I always fall asleep.
Man,
It's like my
Killing me.
go-to
All right.
sick day movie. But I
So because you want
your
to take a
go-to,
nap.
I need a nap movie.
know
No,
it's great.
It's
Yeah.
great. I love it. And again,
It's got some
nostalgia.
Oscar winners in it, man, or eventually
Yeah,
Oscar winners.
There you go.
eventual. Yeah, fucks with your brain. Nostalgia does. But this out, I just watched it actually last month just because I was homesick, taking a sick day and watched some Goonies. Loved it. My daughter says
Good
she'll watch it
movie.
with me tomorrow because we were talking about movies over Father's Day that no one had seen, and my daughter's like, "You never let me watch the Goonies." I'm like, "Oh, I've tried to get you to watch this movie with me. So I'll watch it tomorrow." But that's my first recommendation. I just think that it's not as much trauma in this one. It's a little bit more lighthearted. So yeah, it's great. It's a lot of fun. So watch
It's a good
watch
one.
Stand By Me, and then when you need a palate cleanser or something happy, watch the Goonies.
Watch the Goonies.
I love that. Okay, I'm gonna do one. I love coming of age stories. It's like my
Mhm.
favorite. That's my comfort. And so I'm gonna do one that it's a book and a movie. Another one of those that is well, it's set in the early 90s, but it was written in the late 90s, and the movie came out in 2012. But it's The Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Ah,
It is
Love it.
one of my favorites. I think something I love the most about it is that it really does a good job describing the feeling of adolescence that is like, I am the only person experiencing this, and
Mhm.
I'm so, and not like in a cool way, in that I'm so alone way. And I think
Mhm.
obviously there's some other depth to it that I won't go into, but I this is like a comfort read for me. I cry a lot when I read this. The movie's
That's
quite
awesome.
good, Ezra
Movie's
Miller
really
stuff
good.
aside. But you know, every movie has someone that needs to be canceled. But I love this book and I love this movie. So Perks of Being a
Yeah.
Wallflower for the like serious side of coming of age.
It's very good.
Amazing.
Awesome.
I love that movie.
That's great.
I have not seen it or read it, but I got to check it out.
So good.
I'm going a slightly more silly route for my movie choice. It's a movie that came out around the same time. I didn't actually look up when this movie came out, even though I've got a copy downstairs. I could have just grabbed it. But it also features a group of adolescent, mostly boys, I think, that are all friends with each other, have absent parents, they're latchkey kids. They have to band together to go do something, which in this case is to confront all of the universal monsters, including Dracula and Frankenstein. I'm talking, of course, about Monster Squad.
Yes, I love that movie.
It's
That's
so
love it.
much like a goofier version of Stand By Me, as far as the kids feel very familiar, the language feels very familiar,
Yeah.
and then you've got the creature from the Black Lagoon coming out of a swamp to threaten the
Mhm.
kids, and it's also got
Funny.
super fun lines in it, like
Yeah.
you've got chopper sick balls from Stand By Me, and this one is
Yeah.
Wolfman's got nards,
Yeah.
where they kick the werewolf
So
in the
silly.
groin. So
All in the same
it's
realm.
super fun.
The
I have
the
never-
humor is
I've never heard
It's
of
a
this
companion
movie,
piece.
but
Oh, it's so
it's
silly.
getting put on
but
the list.
it's so much fun.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah,
I love a
it's so
silly
fun.
movie. Yeah.
this is
That's
amazing.
a great pick.
So I'm also gonna recommend a coming of age story, and I think we are all recommending coming of age stories that are very specific to who we are as
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So the one that I'm recommending is another movie about young men coming of age, coming from a place where they think that they're doomed to just stay there for the rest of their lives, to die there, that they'll never amount to anything. It also starts with the character saying, "Y'all want to see a dead body?" I'm recommending Boys in the Hood.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
There is surprisingly so much in common between Stand By Me and Boys in the
Yeah.
Hood. It's like alarming, but Singleton was definitely like, he had Stand By Me in the back of his mind if he wasn't like
Yeah.
consciously thinking about it when he was making Boys in the Hood.
Yeah.
But those two movies have so much in common.
Yeah.
And I think you guys now know what I mean by we all picked coming of age stories that kind of reflect who we are.
I can see that now. Yeah.
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 You know, Bob and
That's a good one.
Monsters.
Yeah.
Yep.
Monsters.
Yeah, we have some fun ones, some serious ones.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
good
works.
first round.
Yeah,
Yeah.
coming of
Yeah.
age is the best genre because
it is.
the themes are
So
so
good.
universal. It can be dropped into any sort of like atmosphere. You can do it about monsters. You can do it about more serious things. You can, it can be all over the place. But if you're wanting to get your audience to feel and relate to a movie like a coming of age, oh, I love it so much. I love it.
It's the way to go.
All my movies are coming of age, sort of.
Amazing. All right, let's go round 2. Ramona.
I have another coming of age movie.
Hell yeah.
and book. I could probably say either one, but I don't think anyone is going to be too surprised by this.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go with It by Stephen King. And I would say the book as a whole, obviously, but also in terms of the movie chapter 1. Because chapter 1 to me is the better of the two. And it focuses on them as kids in a small town, coming of age. They call themselves the Losers Club. They don't feel like they belong anywhere. They have the chubby kid, throwing a pretty girl on here too. And then they've got to come together to defeat an evil clown. And who doesn't want to see that happen? So this was I really, 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 really enjoyed chapter 1. Like I could just put that on without watching the second one anytime just to watch it. So well done. The director did what Rob Reiner did. He threw them all together to become friends before they started filming, kind of get that camaraderie going. And the book is a little darker, goes a little bit more in depth into Derry and some of the shitty things that happen to kids in that town that you don't really see in the movie, but which is probably good. But yeah, I love the book. I read it for the first time several years ago, and it is probably the only Stephen King book that like literally scared me. Like my husband was out of town. I was reading it, put it down, got up, turned on my closet light. I needed light in the room. I was scared. I was like, this is ridiculous. You are a grown-ass woman. But no, I had my dogs in the bed with me. So it was it's a great book. It's not for everybody, but I think it's probably one of the best coming of age stories, especially in the genre that I've ever seen / read. So I will say It chapter 1 and It the novel.
Great.
Yeah. And
2 for 1.
The novel, the kids part take place in the 1950s again, and the bad guys are kind of greasers again, which makes me wonder if Stephen King had had some kind of issue when he was a kid.
Man, he knew. Yeah, and the bully had a shitty home life too. So again, it's the parents. Pennywise is evil. He's a clown. He's a whole bunch of different things. Actually, he's fear. But the parents in this book are not the best parents. So
we're just unpacking generational trauma. Man,
he's just like, I'm going to help you guys out.
Let's go.
You guys have all had a parent like this somewhere. So yeah.
Okay. Mine. Great. So my next one, I might be breaking the rule and doing a movie already in the canon, but I'm going to do it anyway because I didn't go and research it because I want to talk about this movie. So this one is not a coming of age. I went more into the quest of the movie because you love a quest movie. Like you love let's go on an adventure. The real adventure was the friends we made along the way. Like we love that. And this movie, we need to talk about this is in the canon or not, but it's my favorite adventure movie. It's my favorite Coen brothers, and it's A Brother Where Art Thou.
Yes.
That's got to be in the canon, right? No? Right?
It's not.
All right. Well,
we need another set of votes.
I was gonna say, I think last time I recommended 2 David Lynch's, and neither of those were in the canon either. Yeah. So it's okay. It's okay. We'll get there. Yeah. This is actually my sick day movie. One of them. I have a lot.
It's a good one.
It's a really good one. I mean, I love the mythology angle and all of that, but just the let's go on a quest. That's not really a quest, but is a quest, and it's so charming and it's so yummy, and I love this movie so much. So that is my answer.
Really good too. The music is catchy as hell. I love it.
Yeah, and just like Kiefer Sutherland, George Clooney is a hot criminal, so it's great. Like Holly Hunter, man, we rewatched that A Brother Where Art Thou like within the last month or two, and I was just like, can't wait till my kids are old enough. I don't know, Ramona, if that's your experience, but like I have so many movies that I'm like, not yet.
I'm trying.
One day.
I'm trying. And my youngest, I have twins, they're 12. And one of them is not interested in movies at all. And I'm like, how? Because me and my husband met working together at a movie theater. Like, that's our bonding, you know, that's what we talk about. So I'm like, our kids have to, like, two of my daughters, they're just not interested. But like the other twin, she goes to the theaters with me and my sister. She'll see movies. She loves horror movies. I'm like, you're 12, but okay. My husband doesn't exactly like that. He's like, she's only 12. I'm like, I was like 9 when I saw Carrie and Jaws, and I turned out just fine. So she'll be all right. But yeah, it's I do have movies that are not yet ready for her, but I'm just like, can't wait. Yeah. Share this with her, so then when she gets older, she can share it with her kids and just pass it along.
Fixing generational trauma. Yeah. Exactly. Resetting cycles that probably didn't. Not to make assumptions, but just like, you know, a legacy of film.
My parents passed their love of movies to me, and I went in, and now I'm trying to force it upon my daughter. So
yeah,
I know if it works.
Yeah. Mine are 4 and 6. So we're just like,
you've got some time.
Here's the good Disney Pixar. Here's Willy Wonka. Hey, fast forward through a few scenes.
Pixar has some really great ones.
They really do. So, yep. Yeah. We'll get there.
Yeah. Sorry,
I'm an uncle, so I don't have to follow the rules.
Yeah, you can show them whatever you want.
And then send them home for the nightmares. So.
Exactly. Let them sleep in their parents' bed.
For my second choice, there seems to be this trend in horror writers of a certain age to have all written a coming of age story like this, or more like It, honestly. Boy's Life by Robert R. McCammon is set in the 50s and features the same sort of thing. But my pick is actually, I didn't bring it up. A writer named Dan Simmons, who has written a ton of stuff. You might know him best from the TV show The Terror, which is based on a novel of his. That's a historical novel about the loss of an expedition in the Arctic. But he wrote a book called Summer of Night, which is about a group of young kids in a town where things start going badly during the summer, and they have to band together to try and fight the supernatural creatures. It's very good. It's extremely well written, and it's probably one of my favorites of that particular kind of genre. But if you want to go looking, I'm sure Dean Koontz, all these horror writers of a certain age wrote a bunch of these sorts of trying to deal with being a kid in the 50s sort of horror novels. Yeah. But that's my recommendation.
It's always so weird when I read something and I hear someone reads the same stuff by like not a like super like Dan Simmons is like, I have his books, so when you say Dan, I'm like, you know Dan Simmons? Like, like people know my authors? Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a good pick. Yeah.
Amazing. I like that pick. I'm also going to recommend a book, and I am recommending something that is also dealing with a young man dealing with trauma that is passed on from his father, which is obviously a big part of this movie. I spoke a lot about how it's something that I was struck by. This is a book that is also about someone who lived through World War II, and it is then his son trying to like reconcile with his father's experience and trying to understand like why that made his dad the person who he is and how it made him the person that he is. And I hope that this explanation makes sense, because when I say the title of the book, it might sound weird, but I'm recommending Mouse.
M-A-U-S.
Graphic novel. Yeah.
That's a fantastic and really difficult graphic novel.
Really difficult book.
Yeah. And they're trying to ban it, so buy a lot of copies.
Yes. Damn right.
Yeah.
I bought my copy in London.
That's nice.
Wow.
I see.
That's
okay.
Cool.
I recognize the cover. I don't think I've ever read it, but I recognize the cover for sure.
I read it. It was an assignment for us in middle school.
Really?
Oh, wow.
God,
I went to Montessori school. You know how they can be. But
I got you.
Yeah, it all makes sense. But yeah, I remember not appreciating it at the time, and then reading it again maybe in
There's a lot of
college.
stuff they make you read in school that you're like, and now you're
Yeah,
just
you're like,
that
I
was
can
so
tell that.
meaningful.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
maybe this is wasted
Yeah.
on 13-year-olds, but I see what you're
Yeah.
trying to do.
You're
after the
trying, yeah.
fact. Yeah.
Yeah.
My big takeaway from it, obviously, like, you know, besides like being about like the most unimaginably horrific thing that has ever happened,
Yeah.
but very much so it's about like processing family trauma and like
Yeah.
how it gets
Yeah.
passed on, which
Mhm.
again, I was really surprised by how much of that is in Stand By Me. So
Yeah.
a really weird but also fitting
Yeah.
companion
It
piece.
fits.
Absolutely.
It fits.
That's a fantastic
sure.
choice.
That's a good one.
Yeah. All right, last round. Ramona.
Well, I feel kind of weird going after that pick. But I'm picking I went on theme and just stuck with coming of age. This is also a group of kids, small town, coming together to defeat a creepy supernatural evil. But it's a TV show, Stranger Things.
Yeah.
There we go.
Nice.
Can't
Somebody
not
had to
talk
do it,
about
right?
Yeah.
Nice.
At first I was going to pick The Sandlot because I had seen that for the first
That
time
was-
last year.
Yep.
But
That's
that
a good
fits
one.
too. But Stranger Things is just more my speed. I like the homage. Is it homage or
Homage.
homage?
Oregon.
Oregon. Well, we have the t-shirt company Homage. We have that here in Columbus. So I'm always like, is
Yeah.
it homage or?
I
But
think
yeah, it's
homage.
homage. I
Yeah.
prefer homage. Anyway, we're getting off
Yeah,
topic.
thinking-
So
yeah.
I like the homage to the '80s, the music, the synth. A lot of Stephen King references and inspiration. Other, 80s music soundtrack is amazing. I was with that show from the beginning. It's one of my favorite. I've waited a
Yeah.
really long time for this frickin' last season to come along. But I'm ready. Starting my rewatch in October to get to the first. So I just think being a lover of Stephen King and coming of age and fighting evil, no matter what it looks like, is one of my biggest. It's my comfort genre, I guess you could say. So I'm going to go with Stranger Things because, especially with the 5th season coming along this fall, I think that if people haven't watched it, they should start. Yeah,
It's a good one.
yeah.
Fantastic.
I feel
Amazing.
like you saying you haven't seen Sandlot till
I
last
saw it-
year.
Yeah.
But I feel like, I don't think you're that much older than me, but I feel like y'all had Stand By Me and
Yeah,
Raph and I had Sandlot.
the
Like that was
Sandlot.
our, yeah.
It was
Yeah.
such a charming.
It's so
because
good.
my husband was like, "You've never seen this." I'm like, "We've been married like 22 years, and you're just now asking me if I've ever seen." And I remember very distinctly when the day of my wedding to my husband, my friend Stephanie, who's the one that I still see, she was at my wedding, and she's like, "Are you sure you want to get married to Mr. King?" Because he was our boss. I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "It's forever." Forever. I had no idea. I didn't get the reference. I just thought she was being, facetious. I was like, yeah, I know. Like, it's fine. So then I watched The Sandlot last August. And I was like, when they did I was like,
man.
wait. I was like, wait a second.
I get that reference now.
I do. And I
That's a good
remember
memory.
it so clearly in my head, her
Wow.
going, forever. And I was just like, yeah, I know. Like, I didn't get it. And
Great.
this was like, you never understood. I'm like, I didn't have a clue. I had to call her and be like, Stephanie, do you remember 22 years ago when you told me at the church? She's like, yeah. I was like, I know now what you were talking. She's like, oh my God, how have you never seen Sandlot? So no, it was really good. And I could see it, it's got some fun parallels to Stand By Me, Chopper and the Beast. The little,
Yeah.
adorable English Mastiff that they were terrified of.
Boogie.
I don't know. There's just a lot about it that I enjoyed. So it was. I'm glad I finally got to see it. I should have seen it when I was.
A nice little bonus recommendation.
Yeah.
a
It
little
may or may
bonus
not have been on my
recommendation
list.
for you.
Yeah, sorry, that was my.
Oh
that
no!
was
Was it on your list, Ref? Was it on your list?
It was, but that's
Oh,
okay. I
so sorry.
have more. Hannah, was that your third?
That was my backup. No, that was.
Sorry, you guys.
It's
I
okay.
feel bad now. I took like 4. I'm
Here's
so
the
sorry.
thing: is I get so anxious and I forget till 10 minutes before recording. I need to write these down, and then they just spew out of me, and then I just go on vibes. But okay,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna move on to my third one. I feel like I always do a really just stick with me type of recommendation because you just so I want to give some love to Rob Reiner. I feel like we've talked about Princess Bride. We talked about some of his directorial situations. I then want to also nod back to the like, what character are you? Like we did from earlier in the podcast, because this is another show where everybody is, what character are you? And so I want to talk about Rob Reiner's show, or Rob Reiner's run on New Girl as Justay's dad. He is
I love that show
so good.
So good.
He's so good. I think specifically the one scene where he is teaching Nick how to make the perfect sandwich. And he's like, bread, mayo, lettuce, meat. He's so unhinged. And then when he's engaged to Caitlin Olsen, plays his child bride. And I love New Girl.
So
I say no notes constantly.
No notes. What do you mean no notes?
Yeah. My husband Brian has a list on his phone of Hannah's no notes, because like once a week I spit out another no notes. I am also a Winston.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Anyway,
I do like they do have a little Misery episode, like kind of a little homage to Misery, where she drops a bowling ball on his foot. Yeah.
There's that word again.
There's that word.
Homage.
And homage. That naturally out of you just was homage.
Yeah, homage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I love that show.
Yeah,
I
Rob
love it.
Reiner
That's a great
on New Girl. What a guy.
And Jamie Lee Curtis as her mother. So you get two icons. Yeah.
Icon.
Nice.
Amazing.
So good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that.
That was great. Yeah.
I'm actually going to go for shameless self-promotion, which I think I've only done once before on this thing. But,
Yes. Hell yeah.
I wrote a novelette that was published in 2 parts. I had written it with a back and forth between present day and 1980s day. And the publisher's like, we don't publish things longer than this amount, but we will, if you take the present day and put it here and then do the past here, we'll publish it as 2 stories. So they were published in a magazine called Northern Frights. That's
nice.
You did bring that one up.
Right there.
Yeah.
That's issue, which one is this? Issue 6, volume 2, issue 6, and then volume 3, issue 5 was the second part. And it's about a group of young boys who are going on a fishing trip and discover a monster at an abandoned gravel pit near their house. And how
this is so cool.
Yeah,
That is
That's
amazing.
amazing.
I'm working on trying to turn it into something a little bit more. So there may be like a novella at some point, but
Nice.
now you can get that on Amazon.
So
Hell yeah.
forgive me. So novelette is the tiniest, and then novella, and then novels the biggest. Is that
Right. Yeah. This altogether, it ended up being like somewhere between 11 and 12,000 words.
That's
so
awesome.
Nice. Novella has to be over 25,000 or something
Okay.
like that. So
That's really cool.
yeah.
I
That's
really
awesome.
think that the Bear Doug story, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm telling you, you could embellish a little bit. That's a story. Like
that could
one
be his
got
pie
me.
eating contest.
I'm
with
telling
that,
you.
yeah,
That's the story you tell.
Get
Oh,
that
man,
in
it's all
there
coming together.
somewhere. Yeah.
I'm just
I don't know if you-
writing that down.
Just make some, write some notes. I'm
I love that.
serious.
I don't know if
That's
you've ever
amazing.
seen Buffy, like watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel,
Yeah.
but as they both run, there's websites that kind of have like flip-flop orders, like watch this episode of Buffy and then this episode. So you could just do that with your 2 novelettes and splice them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Splice them, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
That's the plan.
That's the dream. Oh
There we
man,
go.
that's so
That's
exciting.
amazing.
Okay.
Great.
So
I love
cool.
it. That's
Follow
amazing.
that up, Raph.
Yeah. I
What have
honestly,
you
I
been-
can't.
Now you know how
yeah.
I felt. Like, how do I follow
Wow.
house?
Yeah. We should have had Bob go last. We
Yeah.
will we'll link the Amazon link to purchase
Yeah.
Bob's story because that's amazing. Yeah.
So
That's
cool.
awesome.
So dope that you do that. And now I'm going to end with something very boring, which was my backup because we already spoke about the Sandlot,
So sorry.
which is amazing. But sort of to what we were speaking about on the front end of this discussion in terms of like whether or not it actually is safer or if it's just like the perception that it's not safer or it's no longer safe to allow kids to ride their bikes around town and discover dead bodies by the train tracks and all of that stuff. And I was telling you guys how it's something that I've been fascinated by and reading about recently. And there's this book that was based on a article that was in the Atlantic. I'm showing my New Yorker-ness right now with talking about like articles about parenting in the Atlantic. But there's a book called The Coddling of the American Mind, which is about just like issues with students on college campuses and how they're not able to like deal with stuff. And a lot of the roots are in changes that we've had in parenting across the country that kind of speak to this idea of like, maybe it's okay to let your kids just like go fucking explore for a little bit and like they won't die. They will like maybe scratch their knees and that's fine because scratching your knees and healing is like how we learn how to avoid getting our knees scratched if we don't want that to happen. So it feels very in line with this movie and like what is presented to us as like the good old days. And like maybe we're thinking about the good old days maybe not in the right way or like the most holistic way. Like maybe the good old days weren't all that great, but also maybe there are things that we can pull from the good old days that can make today the good old days for kids that are growing up in, you know, today's day and age. Again, not as cool as Bob writing stories about kids finding monsters or telling us a story about Doug and the bear.
Yeah, Bob, you won this podcast. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I think you're our Gordy. You told you.
He's our Gordy.
There you go.
Yeah.
He's the Gordy. Yep.
You're the storyteller.
Just don't die on me, guys.
Yeah, seriously.
I mean, shit happens. You don't
Yeah.
Okay, Chris.
Well, this has been so much fun. I really appreciate you guys hopping on. Before we say final goodbyes, Hannah, for folks who don't know, you and Brian host the What a Picture podcast. Where can folks find you? What's going on there?
We are the What a Picture podcast. We are on all streaming platforms. I think technically Brian has an Instagram that is devoted to the podcast. I have an Instagram that has nothing to do with the podcast, but if you like baking and dogs and my children, you can follow me there. Season 1 was spending 2 years going through the Sight and Sound Top 100 list. Now we're just kind of covering whatever we want because that was 2 years of rigid scheduling and foreign movies. And it was great. And I had such a good time. But we recently did an episode on the Phoenician Scheme. We did one on friendship. So we're looking at more new release. And then kind of, I think if there's not a new movie out we like, we'll look back at old Oscar winners to see if they stand the test of time. I'm looking at you, 1990s movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. But just if you like all the tangents I took everyone on today, you'll love What a Picture. And yeah.
It's very fun.
It's very fun.
I will recommend it. It's a great show.
Right. We had Raph on for the Phoenician Scheme. Had a moment there. Yeah. Raph is our Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
Yeah, guy.
Senior Wes Anderson correspondent.
Senior.
Excellent.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah. I don't know if senior, he got a promotion, but still happy to have him there.
I talked my way into that one.
Love it.
But it's a great show. Everyone should 100% check it out. Ramona and Bob, do you guys have anything coming up on the website that you want folks to be aware of?
I have just rom-com rewinds. We're doing what month are we in now? June?
Still Action Month.
Yep.
Oh, I was like June. But
no, it is. That's what I was wondering. I'm like, is it May still? I don't. This year it's a blend of the same day. Yeah. June is Action Month at Screen Age Wasteland. So my rom-com rewind have been action rom-com specific. So those are every Tuesday at, I guess, 2 p.m. Eastern. I guess 3 Central? I don't know what time he schedules these things.
2 Central, 3 Eastern. But they'll be there.
Go. 2-3, and then I'll have a review hopefully tomorrow posted for The Materialists that I just saw.
Nice.
Is it wonderful?
Nice. Which would be
Yeah.
yesterday by the time people are listening to this.
Yeah, so check it out. I have some other stuff.
Back to the
but-
Future or something.
Yeah, I things that I'm not reviewing for Screen Age, I'm putting on my blog at theromcomcatalog.com. So I have Life with Chuck is up now, and some other stuff. So yeah, I'm just watching
Amazing.
movies and writing what I feel. So
Hell yeah.
Nice.
That's,
What a
I mean, that's what life is all
all
about.
you can do.
Yeah.
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 So that's me.
Bob, Fear Flashback Friday.
Fear Flashback
Or
Friday, although I
same.
missed a Friday. I missed last Friday because there were so many lists going on this month as well.
Oh yeah.
So we're this week we're doing top 50 action movie villains,
Nice.
I believe.
Yeah.
But we'll this Friday we'll have another action / horror movie for Fear Flashback. My brother Jeff and I have 7 siblings, so he's one of the middles. Anyway,
Me too.
he and I are thinking about starting a reaction podcast, YouTube channel
To Love Island.
Yeah, I meant to say. Bachelor
I
Nation.
proposed Maximum Crammage as the name, but he
That's
said
so
no.
funny. Oh.
But yeah, we record the first episode on Friday. We'll see how it goes. It's probably going to be an absolute disaster.
It's going to be amazing. You're
That's awesome.
clearly a pro at this, so
Yeah.
it should be fun. Looking forward to that.
We'll see.
Tell the bear.
It's gonna be
Tell the bear
intense.
story.
You know? Yeah.
Okay.
Doug Bear story every episode.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he's bringing out the bear story again. Good God.
Yeah. No. So good.
I mean, amazing stuff all around from all of you guys. Everyone should go check out all of it because you're all amazing. And we will be next week is our last episode of season 5 before
Whoa.
we take a break for the
Wow.
summer. Yeah. We're going to be talking Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which should be very fun. And then I am going to go on holiday for July and we'll be back in August because this is a tough job. And,
Yeah.
sometimes
Takes a lot of time.
little baby Raph needs a break.
Yeah.
So we'll be back next week with one more episode. Might not be as fun as this, but should still be a great time. We obviously hope to see you there, wherever it is that you're catching this. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube yet, what are you doing? Get over there. You get to see all of our lovely faces reacting to Bob's story. You can see Ramona's Stephen King rule shirt. So if you're just listening to us, we love you there too, but maybe subscribe to the YouTube and you might get a little extra treat. But all that to say, we'll see you here, wherever it is that you're catching us next week. And in the meantime, as always, we will see all of you lovely folks in the wasteland.